On August 2, 1942, a group of teenagers arrived at a residential party outside of Los Angeles in an area known as the Sleepy Lagoon. They arrived with the hopes of settling a dispute that had taken place among several of the partygoers earlier that day. Upon the group's arrival, fighting broke out among the youth, which resulted in many bruises and the stabbing of 2 boys. It was during the brawl that the body of Jose Diaz was discovered on a nearby roadside. It was apparent that he had been run over by a car. The very next day, the death of Jose Diaz made headlines in multiple news sources in LA. His death was said to be the vicious crime of a Panchuco gang. A group of teenage boys, all of whom were of Mexican descent and involved in the brawl that night, were picked up by police and put on trial for murder and murder conspiracy. The defense argued that there was no evidence to prove that the boys had arrived to the house before Diaz had passed away, let alone that they had conspired his murder. Despite what the lawyers considered to be a lack of evidence, on January 12, 1943, 17 of the defendants were convicted. 3 were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. 9 were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 5 years to life. And 5 were convicted of assault and released for time served. The verdict of the Sleepy Lagoon trial seemed unjust to the defendants and their families, but during their trial, the boys were not alone. Working to defend the rights of the boys during their trial was legal advocate LaRue McCormick. McCormick was joined by various groups from the LA area and beyond who were equally as passionate about seeking legal justice for the young boys, whom they saw as victims of a prejudiced system. This group of supporters came to be formally recognized as the Sleepy Lagoon Defense Committee. The objective of the committee was clear. They existed to publicize the injustice of the trial and to raise money to fund an appeal for the case. The committee tried to convince the public that discrimination in the Sleepy Lagoon trial was relevant to all Americans who were in a similar fight against the racist ideology of the Axis powers at work in Europe. Aryan supremacy could be seen as a poison gas of the Axis doctrine and a threat to the democratic unity within the United States. The committee believed that racism was wrong whether in Nazi Germany, in the Jim Crow laws in the South, in Los Angeles in the case of signs that read, "Mexicans not allowed here," or whether it was used in the claims that convicted the Sleepy Lagoon 17. The defense committee knew that prejudice threatening all minorities could not be fought by them alone. Unity of people across the social barriers of race, class, gender, and religion was required to ensure justice for all. Organizations such as Las Madres del Soldado Hispano-Americano, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, and the Communist Party helped the committee and the many family members of the defendants to raise awareness and funds for the case. The Defense Committee organized fundraising events with socially active Hollywood stars. They sent petitions and letters to powerful leaders in the country, and they sold copies of informational booklets that told their story of the Sleepy Lagoon trial. The booklets included a plea to all of its readers saying, quote, "Do your part to win the war on the home front. You can help to crush the Axis fifth column in our midst by helping to free the 17 boys convicted in the Sleepy Lagoon case. It is up to you to show our minority groups that through our democratic institutions and the organized will of the people, such grave injustices are rectified." The efforts of the committee and all of its supporters proved that justice can be found in an unfair system. In October 1944, after a long support campaign that spanned over 2 years, the judges ruling over the appeal case voted unanimously to overturn the verdicts that were made in January of the previous year. They set aside the sentences that had been given to the 17 young men. It was the collective work of citizens throughout the nation and the directing power of the Sleepy Lagoon Defense Committee that ultimately led to the release of the young men. Supporters of this trial understood injustice as something much larger than one case alone, and justice proved to be found in the greater collaboration of willing and convicted peoples who saw discrimination in the Latino community for what it really is, a threat to all people.